Alrighty, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and the Redeemer, and it's in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect this message. Amen. Amen. Hello to everybody. Welcome back. Hold on a second. Alrighty, I don't know if anybody's going to be on, but try and get back on here. Has been a few days, so if we don't have that much participation, it's fine. Those who are watching this live, those who watch this later on YouTube or something else, we're grateful for you. We're thankful. Once again, we give all honor and praise to the Most High Yahweh Elohim. We give praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. You can follow her on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. And I'm thankful. So I've been off for a little bit. Those who watch this later on YouTube, we had a medical situation going on that was pretty extreme. And so had to make sure that, things were taken care of. So I apologize for my disappearance. Tried to have a message that was sent out to as many of you as possible, just to let you know that we weren't dodging or going away or anything like that. But I had to take care of fam. You got to do what you got to do. Grateful to be back on with you all, though. And probably don't have the usual suspects, so to speak, on with this. Just because, maybe not everybody's aware that we're back on. It's all gravy, though. We're usually on. Hey, Divine Key, how you doing? We're on usually every rising at 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. And go follow Divine Key. I know there's only a few of us on right now, but go check her out, what she's doing. She has some great stuff that she posts. Healed herself, was faithful to many different things, and speaks about a lot of different things, shares a lot of different things that are helping our community and that are very obtainable as far as mindset-wise. But just wanted to kind of check in and say hello. I'm not sure how long I'll be on this evening. We'll try to be back on track from now on. I think the last time we were on was Tuesday evening. So Wednesday, Thursday, and even this rising, we weren't on. So I apologize for that. We'll be more than likely, depending on how we're led. You hear my son yelling in the background, playing. We'll probably be back on the Revelation series tomorrow, which will be hitting the last chapter, Revelation chapter 22. So if you're interested in joining us for that, feel free to do so. But thank you to everybody who's coming on. Looks like it's probably a bunch of people who are normally not with us. Okay, I see a couple of names: Jacques, Tamika, hey, how you doing? So I do apologize. Just kind of checking in and saying hello. Like I was saying, once again, it's been a little stressful with the medical situation. It's a very private matter, so probably won't be shared anytime soon, at least, with what's going on. Just we don't want to say we appreciate the prayers and you guys reaching out to us and saying that you were checking in on us. A lot of you even sent some text messages to our numbers and stuff like that. I haven't even had a chance to check the stuff that you guys might have sent via DM or anything like that. So we appreciate you, though, for sending what you did. And thank you to everybody for sending what you did. We appreciate it. And all praise to the Most High. Shalom to those. Amen. Thank you, Divine. Appreciate you. Keep doing great things. Just a lot of different things. I, in all honesty, I can't even say I've been keeping up with much of anything. My wife actually from time to time, hey, Shalom, Shea Butter, and Shabbat Shalom, actually, to everybody. Thank you. It was some interesting stuff, to say the least, that's been going on. But we're thankful, grateful. So I will look through I haven't touched TikTok since Tuesday evening when we were live last. Since Shlai or since Tuesday evening. So prayerfully, you guys have been doing well since. We'll be back on track every rising 8 a.m. Eastern New York time, every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. Our classes will start back on Monday, so no classes until then. So for those who might be afraid that you missed a class or something like that, don't worry about it. Our Patreon, I'm behind on that, so what I will do is starting tomorrow, since this would be day 4 of me not posting anything there as well, starting tomorrow we'll make sure that we post 2 videos and 2 pictures, since we try to make sure we have bare minimum 5 minutes a day on there, and then a picture every day. We'll try to make sure that we post something on there twice a day. And after 4 days, what did that be? Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So by Tuesday, we'll be caught up on that. But thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you. We missed you as well. We saw some of the messages that you guys were sending and things like that. We try to respond as best as we could. We also dealing with the death that just happened recently in the family as well. So there's just been a lot going on. I really don't know what's been going on, like I said, as far as what the newest arguments are, newest things that are being shown all over social media, or whatever the newest political fads or arguments or whatever are. Seems like in the little bit I've caught up on right before I came on here, seems to be more the same. I do find it interesting. I think I find it that it seems like the stuff that people have been talking about with the jab, so to speak, is kind of the same, or that's what we've been saying. Some interesting things going on with that. I guess I did have an interesting thought as far as I was today, just thinking about the fact that if everybody's saying that you need to get the jab, what I find pretty interesting is that they're saying to get it because it's supposed to, everybody needs to get it because it's supposed to help prevent COVID, and that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This isn't a new perspective, but just something I was pondering and focusing on. Because if we're 100%, if we just keep it 100, if we be honest about it, right? If the jab is supposed to prevent people from getting COVID, right, then that doesn't make sense, right? Now, I'm one that I make it a point to say this all the time. My fight on COVID or not COVID, by the way, COVID is a real thing, so I'm not debating whether COVID's real, but as far as how you decide to medicate, my whole thing has been about sovereignty. As a sovereign, you or I should be allowed to decide whether or not we want to take or not take something, and that should be fine. And since there's public and private law, that means there's public and private places. Hey, Moto, how you doing? So if there's public and private law, that means there's public and private places, right? So if there are public and private places, that would speak to the fact that there's public government-oriented places and private places that people can go as they see fit. And if I'm a private citizen and if there's places I can go and I don't have to be around others or whatever, then it shouldn't bother anybody if I'm vaccinated or not. Only if I go into a public place, public being, places that have to bow down to the government. Now, if I go into those places and people say that they're vaccinated or whatever, and they say, please don't come around if you're sick or something, or if you have symptoms, I can, I should, because I'm going in there, hey, how you doing, Minister Select Sonia? I should be able to go into those places, and I should be able to say, okay, if I go into those places rather than I have symptoms, I should say I'll be obedient, I won't go there. That's like if you're sick and you're going to your job, you shouldn't show up on your job if you're sick. However, if I'm well and tested even, and I know that I don't have COVID, I should be able to go into those places and it shouldn't be a problem. People who have a problem with it, when you look at it, it turns into a thing of it's more so a political thing. Remember when we were talking about capitalism. Capitalism is defined as when politics and economics, it's a system rather in which politics and economics are used to control trade and industry, and trade and industry is controlled by private organizations instead of the government, right? So the only reason why you're being told to get anything, and not just, take it just off that's not just the vaccine, look at it in life in general. The reason why you're told to use the currency that you use, the reason why you're told to pray or not pray, in the places that you go, your children are told not to or not to do something. The reason why you're told that, hey, make sure you go through places where you have to be taxed on cryptocurrency rather than having a cold storage wallet. The reason why you're told to get a license to drive rather than just make sure that you comprehend what it is legally to travel. The reason why these things are given is because all those things go through private organizations that make money. right? Like, for example, I know people want you to believe this, but the only reason why there's a law that says that you need to buckle your safety belt is because there are people who make money off of that. Like, that's just real, right? Like, there are vehicles that don't have, if you have certain, you have to modify them nowadays, but if you look back, it's not too many decades ago that you could have a vehicle that didn't have seatbelts and definitely didn't have them in the back, for sure. That's because somebody started making money off of those things. You know, the reason why you had to have driver's insurance, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, especially if you're in the wrong, you should have something in place where you could pay somebody, or you should lose, especially if you have a license to drive, you should definitely lose your privilege, because driving is a benefit of privilege. Traveling is your Elohim given right? So if you're going to use that and you're going to hurt somebody and hinder their ability to be able to live their life in a secure manner, in a healthy manner, you should have something in place, some law in place that protects people in that. But all this stuff is really more so just because you make money off of it. Drivers, so the people who are getting insurance for your car, when you get insurance for your car, what do? You give money to that insurance place all the time. And then when you get in the accident, you don't get that money for a while. You don't get it when you need it, and it takes a while for you to get your car fixed or whatever. Why does it take so long for all this stuff to happen? It's because that the company takes your money that you give to them and they invest it, right? Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Manuel. I hadn't seen that one before. So they say take your money, invest it somewhere else. Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Sharice, how you doing? So, these are the things that are happening constantly and consistently. If somebody takes your money, takes your money and they're investing it, but then they don't give it back to you, right? The bank, let's say you had $70,000 in the bank, you want to take $70,000 out, put the cash in my hand, they won't give it to you. Why? Because they are investing it. They don't even have $70,000 there, right? So you don't have my money, but you say that my money should be available to me. Matter of fact, you don't have gold or silver to be able to back it up, right? So you talk about, hey, I have this promissory note worth $100. Give me $100 worth of gold or silver. They won't give it to you because they don't have gold or silver. They tell you to do a loan, right? Through all these loan companies and all this stuff where they're making all this interest and everything off of you. And they're telling you that in order to have good, what they say is good credit, that means that you have to go into debt well. And if you can go into debt well and you can keep paying them off, then they'll give you more credit. That means now you can go into debt further each time. It's all connected to something way more, with way more depth, something on a much more sinister level than many of us think about. And, the reality of that is that we have to be in a position to where we should be able to call our own shots. And really, this is the issue, more so than whatever medication somebody's trying to make you take or whatever. The issue is that the goal is to make sure you're dependent. Right? That's why they want you to be on benefits and privileges. If we teach you how to live a life, right, to where you're not on benefits and privileges, then we take away somebody else's control over your life. And there's the essence of all the arguments, right? So in all the stuff I see coming back, doesn't matter which argument we talk about. Do you want to talk about schisms? You want to talk about chauvinism? You want to talk about, separatism, classism, racism, et cetera, et cetera. It's all coming back to a place of trying to take away control. Hey, Shalom, Sister Tracy, how you doing? It's all coming back to a place of trying to take away control. If we can take control away from you, right, and what do we say all the time? There's self-control. So if there's control, but there's no sense of self, and we take self out of the picture, all it is left is control. And so a lot of people don't have the ability to have self-accountability, to have self-appreciation, to have self-reliance. All right, to have your own business, right? To have, that's even like having a residence legally is a different form, right? Rather than having your own home. A home means it's yours. Residence is something else, right? There's a lot of things that they throw out at us, and the whole thing is to get us to get further away from self. And so as I've looked up the tiny bit, I promise you, I really have not been on social media in all these last few days, especially TikTok. Hey, how you doing, Breezy? Shabbat Shalom. But that kind of seems to be the same thing. I kind of walk back into the same conversation, which is a lot of people that are arguing things and not ever thinking to themselves about control and who's controlling you, right? So That's why people like Minister Malcolm X, Malcolm L. Shabazz, they said stuff that was powerful. Hey, Shalom CR7, how you doing? He said something that was powerful, right? He said that I am not a Republican. He said I am not a Democrat. He said that and I'm not even an American, and have sense enough to know it. And then the thing I always marry that with that he said it's like he likened it to being a diner. He says, I'm not a diner until you let me dine. And think about that, right? Now, this isn't exactly what he said, but this is the picture that he's painting. This is the homiletical discussion that we take with that and are able to grow from and have some other discussion, right? Because in essence, what he's saying is this. He's saying, so you can put me in a place that says diner on the top, right? Like it can say diner on the top of the building, right? And when I come in, they can say that I'm a diner, right? They can have a waitress and a waiter or a waiter. You can have, your host, your hostess, whatever. You can be seated at the table and everything. And let's say there's a menu that comes out. Problem with the menu, though, is that they say, well, you can't order from this menu, right? Unless you can afford whatever, right? Which is no problem, right? If you go into somebody's establishment, you should have a comprehension. That's why we should make sure if we're going to be in the world, you better know how to be able to pay for things within the world, but also have power to where if you want to walk away from it and eat on your own, you can have the power. You can be in it, but not of it, right? But if you go into the system and they tell you in the system that even if you have the money, right? So let's say the most item cost there is $50 or a meal cost there is $50 and you come in there with $200, you should be able to eat whatever you want on the menu, right? I mean, obviously there's a limit to how much you'd be able to buy, and then based in the essence of what we're speaking, I should be able to get whatever I want off that menu, right? The problem comes though is that when they tell you can't have what's on the menu. Now you see other people who might not even have the $200 that you have, but they're getting the chance to not only eat the stuff that's worth $10 and $15, but they're getting the chance to eat the $50 menu, right? But you're both in a diner, right? We're all in a diner, and supposedly if we're all in a diner, then we should all be down. And they call us diners, and we both had to deal with the hostess. We both had to deal with the waitress, and we both had to make sure that we were ready to do our tip and all that stuff. Matter of fact, you have to make sure that you give the tip, right? The 15-20% gratuity, but other people, they can decide whether or not they want to give it. But you don't get to have what's on your plate. Your plate is empty and their plate is full of food. Or your plate, you can only get 3 items out of a 200 item menu. Something's not right about that, right? Everybody should have the right to order whatever they want off the menu if we're all diners. The problem is, though, we can't say that we're all diners if we can't all order what we want, right? And that's the problem. It doesn't matter if we're talking about medicine, vaccination, race relations, social issues, social constructs, whatever it is. The problem is that you got a bunch of people that are at a diner and we're having people argue whether or not they dine the same. And somebody says that I don't go through the same. Like when I sit down at the restaurant, what I'm allowed to order off the menu is not the same as what you're allowed to order off the menu. And somebody else says, man, look, we're all diners. We're all Americans. We all go to church. We all look at the Bible. I mean, heck, there's all these different things. We're all this. We're all that. We are all going through a human experience. All these terms that people hit you with. Stop talking about, protecting black women. All women go through the same exact issues, as if everybody is getting the same menu. I mean, heck, there's a children's menu, and there's a menu for those that are vegan, and there's a menu for this, right? And so, but each one is saying, hey, I might eat differently. I might be at different levels, but I want to be served as to what I have. There's some people that have allergies. So you're just going to say, well, we put peanut oil, we use peanut oil for everything. Well, some people are going to die if you use peanut oil for everything. And then somebody says, well, get out of here if you don't eat peanut oil, right? It doesn't make sense. Matter of fact, if you want to make finance, if you want to make true money off of it, you would make sure that you found a way to feed them. To be inclusive, it would help with the diner, right? But we're trying to figure out why the diner, why the country, why the world is falling apart. And they can't even look at the fact that they have stuff on the menu that's killing people. Salah, right? Yeah, stuff on the menu that's killing people. Yeah, food on the menu that's killing people. I was talking with somebody. We were at a rest area while we were traveling on the way back to where we are now, and we stopped at a rest area, and we were talking to a lady who didn't really know us, and she saw Solomon. He knows that dandelion is a officinalis. It's great for healing, right? And it's great for healing everything. So he's picking dandelion up out the ground and probably going to eat it. Now she said though I was telling him leave it down there, just attend patience, be patient. On the way out we'll pick it up. And she's like, oh, okay, I know what he's going to do with that. And so her mind was thinking he's going to take it, he's going to probably blow it and let the seed go or whatever. And I was telling her, no, actually, he knows that dandelion is great for this and it's great for medicine. She's like, oh, really? She's like, what part of it can you eat? And we were, my wife's like, you can eat the whole thing, right? And he was basically eating, and so kind of gave her a little thing. I was even saying, hey, a lot of the stuff that they give, like for example, they'll give you the stuff to spray for weeds to kill the dandelion. If you ever used that, it ended up getting cancers and stuff that comes from that. Guess what? You should, if you're going to get something to medicate to get past that, you should actually get some dandelion. It'll help heal you, right? And if you go to the doctor, the very thing that they'll give you is going to be stuff that's going to have side effects because they're only going to focus on what they've genetically modified to give you in that pill. That's basically, in essence, the same thing you can get from just eating a dandelion, period, right? And she was just like, wow, she was blown, but that's, the fact that he knew that, right? But a lot of people aren't aware, right? Like, so they're dining, this country has you as a diner, right? Having you sit down, it's having you stuff that's on the menu and it's telling you that the stuff that will heal you, don't order that. We're not going to cook that. It's on the menu, but we don't really want to cook it, right? We want you to eat this. We're going to have stuff that has that peanut allergy, in this analogy that we're using in this parable, so to speak. And people are missing it. People are missing what's for them that's natural law, natural state. And that seems to be, no matter how far along, I'm going to try and catch up, because it's amazing when you're looking at this stuff on a regular basis and you take a few days away, how much stuff you miss. But I'm pretty, so far, just a few videos and stuff, it's the same thing. The same stuff people are focusing on that allows people to be in a diner and yet not dying, allows you to be in a country and yet not be taken care of, allows you to keep taking medicine and having people, the third leading cause of death in America is medical malpractice. Right in the place that you dine, right in the place that you live, right in the place that you keep giving these taxes to, right? You got to pay for it. Think about how many people have gone to the hospital, tried to figure out why their hospital bill was so high, and never once thought, let me get an itemized bill. You shouldn't have to. You wouldn't think that you'd have to, but you should get an itemized bill, because they start charging you for stuff that you never use, or they start charging you twice as much for stuff as what the regular price is. Like things like that. So even if you're somebody who did everything the correct way, you still get penalized just because. Revelation chapter 6, verse 1 and 2, that first horseman, people conquering just for conquering's sake. They can't even tell you why they do it. A lot of times, I'm not saying that nobody had a vision in mind when they put all these wicked places in place in the system for the systemic issues. They, some people systematically put them in place, but a lot of people don't even know this stuff exists, which means that they just do it for the sake of doing it. Right? Yeah, no profit in curing people. Right? So in all these arguments that you have, and look, I'm one of the first people that has no problem. We want to talk about racism. I'll talk about racism. Well, here's the thing. How many people talk about ways to cure racism? And by the way, cure racism is, you got to get out the system. Racism is a system. Everybody's talking about how do you get a system to explode. The only way you're going to get the system of racism to explode is you have to get rid of every country that has been affected by colonization, and everybody has to start over. Now, is it easier to do that, or is it easier just to understand the difference between being a public citizen and a private citizen? Is it easier to do that, right? Is it easier to try and blow up every system? Because people had this weird thing in place. Like, if you got rid of, for example, if you got rid of all the police officers, right, in this country, but you still had judges, you got to get rid of the judges. Well, if you got rid of the judges, you still got this system that's in place to where there's still certain laws. right? And then all of a sudden, if you get rid of them, well, then you still have federal units, and then you have the military. So now the military comes in because, the military and the police officers, as much as we try to act like they're different, they might have different jurisdiction, but they work for the same system. Hey, shalom, Brother Allen, how you doing, right? So if it's the same system, at some point you have to start thinking to yourself, how do you get separated from this system? So that's secure. But it's the same fight. The fight, that's why we do so much stuff on here on just the educational tip. And we don't even really go as deep into this as we do when we do it, offline, so to speak. But we really don't even touch the surface. I won't even say don't touch the surface. We go a little deeper than the surface on here, but we always end up going so many different places because so many of us don't even comprehend that there is another system. There is another alternative besides hitting your head against the wall and hoping that it won't bleed this time. Or, punching the wall with your fist, hitting that, what's that, Ghetto Boys, had blood on, my hands was all bloody for punching on the concrete, right? Oh man, homie, my mind is playing tricks on me. A lot of people high off a system and trying to figure out how do you stay connected to a system that's, as Curtis Mayfield would say, is your pusher man, right? Shabbat Shalom, Charlton. So maybe we could just stop believing the narrative. It might be possible. I mean, yeah. Look. Yahshua said it like this, Luke chapter 12, verses 51 through 53. Do not think that I came, that there might be, don't think that I came that there would be peace everywhere. He said, if I give you this truth, mother's going to be against daughter, father against son, and mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, father-in-law against son-in-law. All right. Some people are going to be hip to truth. Some people aren't. Some people have made their lives off of falsehood for so long. There's a video I shared a little while ago. There's a sister, probably 50, 60 years old. She finally made it to whatever office. I forget what office she finally got to. And she said she'd been working for 30 years and she was part of the problem and she was going to try and correct it. And she said for 30 years, she had been locking up men and women for little, nickel bags and stuff like that. And some of them serving light sentences and trying the best to rip people out of their homes and trying to help things along that cause divorce and all these different things like that. And she said, I know that I was wrong now. And, now that we know, we're going to try and do something about it. And it hit me a few different ways because I was just having an honest moment. I didn't even have anything much to say. I just was honest about it. I said, this hits me in a bunch of different ways. First of all, you did this for 30 years. So there's 30 years worth of blood on your hands. People who've died in prison, still in prison, families that have been ripped apart because of stuff that was nonsense. Secondly, you just now started speaking on this stuff now that you got voted in. So did you know this the whole time for 30 years and still were locking people up because you figured, hey, once I get in the system, I can make change? Because you now making change for maybe 10 years or so. If you in there for a long time, 10 years versus 30 years, that's a huge problem, right? That's a huge fight. And then, but let's say let's say that you are just being 100% transparent and saying, I didn't know any better. Now we're going to change it. Well, now that you know that that's the deal, what are the laws that you're going to create? Do you even have the power and the structure that's there to create the laws? And by the way, if you've been this blind to it when people have been telling you, because that's the thing that gets me. And look, this is my elder, so I'm not going to speak bad, in a bad way about her or try to, speak disrespectfully of her, right? But at the end of the day, right? She did that for what was it? For 30 years, right? So for 30 years she did that. Now, if you did that for 30 years, right, and you didn't know any better, how much more do you know now? In the matter of months or weeks or whatever, when you decided to run and you started to realize that change was needed? There comes to be a place where you got to comprehend the system as a system, right? There's a lot of people that don't believe in the system. And I'm not trying to speak against you. I hope you seeing what I'm saying, right? Like, there's a lot of people who don't believe in this system, but the system still exists, right? So, easy example right off the bat, but it's not the only one. We're going to give a couple examples, right? But Couple of, like, first example, how many people out there say racism doesn't exist? But there's a system. See, racism is not a person, it's not a place, it's not a thing, it is a system. Right? Amen. I'm always learning too, right? So when I talk about racism, I'm not talking about an individual. When I'm talking about racism, I'm not talking about the president. The president can't change racism. See, we've been taught a fallacy. The president works for the system. In order for the president to fight against racism, or really to have us go somewhere without racism, he would have to participate in something that wasn't created to be systemic, right? Racism was systematically put in place. There's a system. So people will say, people made the mistake. Obama. This is why people did this on both sides of the aisle, by the way, not just Republicans. Democrats did this too, right? Like, people were like, Obama. People say this to this day. There can't be any racism in America. You had a black president. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? But because they think that racism is an individual. They think that individuals create racism. Racism is a system. And by the way, Obama didn't work for black people, right? Obama worked for the system, right? Well, it was designed. Yeah, well, it was designed because of capital. Black people were designed just like all slaves, or the word slave is a newer word in the story of mankind, or of man. Nevertheless, racism is a system like anything else, and it's basically racism and capitalism go hand in hand. The fight in 1776, in 1861, the fight that continues to go on in the United States corporation. It's always been about capitalism versus chattel slavery, and capitalism was going to take over, and chattel slavery still exists as long as somebody's locked up and put in prison. So it's always been a financial thing, right? It's a system put in order. If you look at Willie Lynch syndrome, the Willie Lynch syndrome series that we did, that's on Facebook mostly. I think it's on the podcast as well, right? And if you go look that up, you'll see the whole time it's talking about economics. The reason why you're getting men and women to no longer be husbands and wives and to switch positions is because it keeps people in a position where they have to keep being enslaved and looking up to somebody who will be the person to give them what they need, or at least so what those people think they need, right? That's what racism is. It's a system. Even the word race, before it became about black and white, race just means what? A competition. So it's a competition, a system of competition, right? But then it became about race because, hey, black people could work in the sun longer than others. Hey, shalom, Shabbat shalom, Kathy, how you doing, right? So it's a system. So even in that, when you have people talking, it's very interesting because people will always take it, well, I'm not racist, or somebody will say this all the time, well, I'm black and I'm talking about blah, blah, blah. I'm defending white people on this one. What you guys say about that? I'm black. It's like, just because you're black doesn't mean racism doesn't exist. Like, racism is a system. If you're talking about a racist, that's a different conversation. And even the word racist is different than what people think. Racist is supposed to be somebody who's proficient at competition, right? However, if the competition is based on black or white, then you shouldn't be a racist, right? If you're great with the human race, competing to make sure that people can have the best they can, then maybe you should be a racist. But if you're somebody who's competing to say that black people are better than whites, or white people are better than black just because of the skin color only, then maybe you shouldn't do the racist thing, right? If you get what I'm saying. Right. So there's a lot of so people miss that. People try to have an argument with me about race, and it's like you don't get it. The ISM made it a system. I'm not as concerned. I'm not saying you shouldn't be concerned about people that wear sheets over their head and stuff like that, or the people that now traded in the sheets, as Minister Malcolm X also taught us. People have traded in the sheets, and now are wearing judge robes and all that. But understand, it's the system, right? It's the system. It's not the individual. Remember that no individual is greater than the society, and no society is greater than the individual, right? It's the system that you should be concerned about. You see, and it doesn't matter how many. See, this is the problem we also have because of that bad narrative. We have this idea. It feels like we're being led to talk about that tomorrow. I don't know, but we'll pray about it. My goal is to finish up Revelation chapter 22. Nevertheless, right? What you got to get out of it is like, it's the individual, that makes up the society, and it's the society that makes up the individual. Shabbat Shalom Shabbos, right? You said you're not too tribal. Okay. I get you. So, so the individual is not the problem for the system, right? The system teaches individuals, right? From the time a baby is born, there are certain things that are already in place because of the way a baby looks. Before they can talk, they will already be taught certain things. Before they were born and came out of the mother's womb, they were already hearing and smelling and seeing and tasting and feeling certain things, dealing with the society outside of the mother's womb. It's a system, right? There are babies that will live in certain societies just because of redlining is there. They will be born and raised 1 year, 2 years old, toddling. Some of them never even seen parks, national parks, things like that. Being able to see grass, things like that that a lot of us take for granted. Just thinking that's a natural thing. Maybe seeing a little bit of it at the park, right? Just because of redlining. How their mom deals with frustration and stuff, they will taste it from their mother's breast. Like your baby tastes emotion, right? These are all things people don't take into place. There's a system that's there. Before the baby is being groomed as an individual through the lens and the prism of a system. That's why the first thing we deal with is culture, because if you don't comprehend the culture, you don't comprehend the system it comes from. Right? If you don't comprehend the system it comes from, then you're already going to be messed up. So that's why even when people hit us with stuff with Kemet, I'm like, hey, you might want to be careful with that. Do you know what that Kemetic thing you're talking about is? Or you just saying, hey, I've read in the book somewhere some Kemetic people do this, and so I'm going to just do it. Do you understand that a lot of Kemetic people that might have looked bad at that? Because systemically, that's not something they liked. But because that you're just looking for anything, you searching for anything, you might be going down the wrong path, right? You're looking for anything you can find, and before you know it, you're going down the wrong path. What determines your culture? What determines your culture? Your society, once again. The lens, right? It should be the society that you really embrace should be that which is of your own people. But unfortunately, we've embraced societies that have nothing to do with this. And now people teach you, well, just embrace any society, whichever one you choose. That's whichever one everybody should respect. And by the way, you should. But really, it depends. Like for me, if somebody says, so for example, this is, the canon that I'm in the kingdom of heaven, right? Right? As Yashrael, right? At Yashrael. So if you're going to talk about the Bible, for example, for me, let's go with different religion, what they call religiosities. If you're going to talk about the Bible, then you got to know about Israel. If you don't know about Israel, then you miss everything in the Bible, right? Revelation. If you can't even talk about Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, Revelation chapter 1, verse 3, Revelation chapter 1, verses 14 and 15, Revelation chapter 2 and 3, Revelation chapter 7, Revelation chapter 12, Revelation chapter 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, right? If you don't know what Israel is. If you don't know what is right, you can't even talk about those who are grafted in, who are not Israel, because others can come in too, but Israel has to play her part. So how can you talk about it without the culture, right? But a lot of people talk about the Bible and totally dismiss Israel and say it doesn't matter about Israel. Matter of fact, they do that Nicolaitan doctrine. That's Old Testament stuff. That stuff don't matter no more. Even though Revelation chapter 2, starting at verse 12, when you get to the Nicolaitan doctrine, it'll tell you, hey man, be careful about that stuff of saying that there's old and new. It says in Revelation chapter 2, verse 12, you start reading a little, further down as well, that you'll find, and it talks about that doctrine of Balaam. When you do some research on it, you'll discover that Balaam doctrine is doctrine that literally was supposed to attack Israel and who it was. So Revelation says you can't even talk about worship in Revelation chapter 4 before the throne, where these 7 spirits, these 7 assemblies that are trying to get to the Most High are without the culture, right? You can't talk about being a Muslim without knowing about the culture. If you're a black Muslim, do you know that the black Muslims version of Allah is different than Allah, who's supposed to be short for Allahim, or Allahim, or Elohim, right? Do you, if you're a black Muslim, understand that who Farrakhan's talking about, not hating you got the right to believe whatever you want to believe, but do you know what you believe? When Farrakhan talks about Allah, he's talking about a man He's talking about Elijah Muhammad was taught by the Honorable W.F. Muhammad, right? And W.F. Muhammad's supposed to be Son of Man, so he's supposed to be their version of Yahshua HaMashiach, or who they call, Jesus Christ. And W.F. Muhammad's father, who's black and his mother is white, is supposed to be a representation of how the black man's going to have the white man in subjection, and the black man is supposed to be Allah. So their Allah starts in like the late 1800s. That's what their form of Allah is. So take that. So that's the culture of it. So if you have all these beliefs and you're picking and cherry picking and stuff, be careful that you comprehend. That's a whole different. Their whole concept of Ramadan is not even on the same time as Ramadan's supposed to be in the Quran, right? Their concept and therefore, it's okay for, for them, they say it's okay. So they're Allah. So black Muslims, Allah is a man. That's what they don't come out and say that. And there's some people who are part of the Nation of Islam who don't even know that. But if you just do some quick research, matter of fact, Elijah Muhammad talks about this quite often. Matter of fact, there's they have Founders Day. I've thought about possibly doing something called a Founders Day at some point in the future. But a lot of organizations, have Founders Days. Founder Days basically just means you celebrate the day something was founded, right? But in their Founders Day, for their stuff, Founders Day is really just, it used to be just him speaking. And ever since then, it's just been Minister Louis Farrakhan. And he would speak and speak and speak. And part of his speaking, when he got older, it became very hard because it wasn't as coherent. But listen to him speak. He even speaks about it in interviews where he talks about how he met W.F. Muhammad, the Son of Man. And if you look at W.F. Muhammad and do some research on him, he actually was somebody who was on the run from the police, doing illegal activity, going from place to place to place to place. They were looking for him all the time. And he all of a sudden disappeared. The only picture that I've seen of him when he disappeared the last time since then was he was actually in a picture with Muhammad Ali's second wife. So he was somebody they took care of, but he kind of just, they always kept him away from stuff because he was on the run. You said you believe that everything is a miracle and try to keep it simple? Yeah, I guess. But that's why I say it's about cultural. If that's your culture, we respect your right to believe that. In our culture, we know that miracles can be negative and positive. That's something else that they don't talk about, right? What about, thank you, DMB. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Or what about, here's another one. Going with, if you're talking about, this could be Sunni or Shiite, but going to more of the traditional Muslim faith. Excuse me. A lot of people don't talk about the fact that in the traditional Muslim faith, they're talking about Ishmael versus Isaac. Well, we as Isaac and they as Ishmael shouldn't have, we might be able to argue about the word or whatever somewhat, but we shouldn't have a lot of beef with each other because that's our brother. Another thing about the Muslim faith, if you're going to talk about the Muslim faith, you not only need to have the Quran, but you need to have other books that are written by people that they anybody who's like a staunch advocate and student and teacher of the Quran, they will tell you that, hey, you need to get some other books to go with this Quran because there's people that had to make sure that they wrote testimonies because the Quran really is not Muhammad talking. If you read the Quran, it's really not Muhammad talking. It's about accounts of what happened with Muhammad. And then there's people that were around Muhammad who were able to make sure that people didn't take this in many different places, because right after Muhammad died, people were using the Quran just like they use the Bible, right? To do all types of wild, perverse things to people, mismanage people, hurt women, take over people, say it's all right to kill people, do all this other stuff, and say it was all about the will of Allah. So there were some people that had traveled with them, a wife, Mansa Musa's eldest brother and father possibly, but his eldest brother. A lot of people, you're supposed to make sure that you get their accounts of what happened, because people will try to tell you this is what he meant, and they'll be like, no, we were right there when he said it. We were right there when this happened. That's definitely not what you're supposed to do. This is what he meant, right? But people don't know that. What about if you're a Buddhist? If you're a Buddhist, which sutra are you talking about? Because they're all slightly different, which means that they're all people's versions, right? So are you talking about the actual Shakyamuni Buddha, who is the first Buddha who's called the enlightened one because he comes from an African tribe who was in India called the enlightened people. So do you know about that tribe that he came from? Do you know, if you're coming from the Lotus Sutra, which chapter of the Lotus Sutra you get information from? Do you know, if you're chanting, what the I forget what they call that mirror that you have up, right? But the mirror that's supposed to be the mirror to the soul that you open up and you chant to. Do you know what gods are on there? Because they'll tell you it's not about gods, but they have a bunch of deities on there. Why? Because they come out of Hinduism. Hinduism is supposed to be a bunch of deities or gods or whatever, but really the reality is that they're really just supposed to be one one main spirit, and then all of them are manifestations of the same. But which one are you talking about? Are you talking about Lotus Sutra, Heart Sutra? Some people live off Kama Sutra and don't even know it, where you got a lot of lustful stuff. If you're talking about God bless America, which God are you talking about? You're talking about deism, where people believe that they're deists. You said, why do have dress? Isn't that for Rastafarians? Why do have dress? What do you mean? Well, I don't have dreads because I don't dread my hair. We do have locks. People who didn't like the locks, they called them dreadlocks. Number two, before there was Rastafari, there were people who had locks. But I definitely don't use dreads. I have locks. I don't dread anything about my hair. But yeah, before there were Rastafari, there were people who had locks. Look up a lot of Kemetic, pharaohs, and see how many of them had locks. See how many of them had hair that was just like mine. They didn't even, like people say, I'm supposed to make sure I have it braided up and you can see the scalp and all that stuff from every single angle and stuff. See how many of them had hair that looked just like this. So yeah, before. But so before I have family that's Rastafari. My mom's side, which goes back to the Swiss side, which goes back to West Africa, and to Yashriel over there and stuff, before, so I have Rastafari in my family. But before there was a Rastafari, there were locks. So I don't worry about having to be a Rastafari for that. I'm not mad at a Rasta that says that they're, that you shouldn't have it. If that's their belief system, that's fine. But, there were locks many years before there was Rastafari. So, but we keep it for similar purposes at the end of the day. So we keep it because there's a belief system and it's cultural, and it's something that we believe should be passed down generation to generation. That's why my youngest, he has never had his hair. He's never had his hair cut since being born. Never had his hair with anything pulled out of it, anything like that. You didn't know that? Yeah. There were locks before Rastafari. Locks existed back to, we're not sure about this, but probably going back to the first human beings. There were locks. Oh no, it's all great. I don't know if they really knew that they were. I don't think they were trolling. It didn't seem like it, but it's all gravy. You said it's the King James Version Bible okay to study? Yeah, I usually use the King James Version, but all of them are versions, unless you're going to Paleo Hebrew, right? And even that's kind of hard to piece together the exact one, right? But all of them are versions. I don't care if it's the Ethiopian version, the Hallelujah version. They're all versions of the Bible, right? So at the end of the day, you need to know the culture. That's why we always go to culture first. If you comprehend the culture, you'll start seeing when people are giving you nonsense. Right. But yeah, 1611 King James Version, the original 1611 King James Version is usually the one that I tell people to try to go to. It's a little more expensive if you're going to get like a really great version, and it probably costs you about $50 or so, bare minimum, but it's worth it for your study down the road. It's a little harder to read, but it's definitely great. So what I think about the Ethiopian Bible, I think that it's great. Once again, I think you just need to know culture first before you do anything. But whichever version of the Bible you're reading, just make sure you know culture. That's why, like when you see the NIV is not so great. And if you know the culture of stuff, you'll see that they're removing whole verses, sometimes whole chapters of things, just because it goes back to like Alexandrian Bible type stuff, which then was like pumped up when they had the the Council of Nicaea, things like that later on. So that's why we always talk about culture first. That's why we're always going to talk about culture first. If you know the culture of something, because remember, culture informs your beliefs. Once you got those beliefs, your beliefs are going to inform your emotions. That's why people are emotionally tied to different things like that. Yeah, I've heard of the Book of Adam. I read a tiny bit of it. It doesn't really make sense right off the bat for certain things, and it definitely doesn't match up. And it didn't really show up in history at all until it's not even mentioned in the Bible. That's one of the things too. Like when we talk about versions of the Bible and all these different versions of books of the Bible that supposedly are missing, a lot of times you will see the Bible talk about it. For example, the Bible talks about the Book of Enoch. The Bible talks about the Book of Jasher, right? The Bible mentions, Maccabees briefly, but like only a tiny bit mentions and stuff, right? So we can actually look in even the 66 books, verify things in there, or historically. Some people say historically, but even historically, right? You can find things in there. Yeah, of course, and prayer as well. Amen. Yeah. Thank you. Love to praise Yeshua. Thanks for being part of what we're talking about. I don't have too much more to talk with you guys about. It's getting up there in the hour. I'm going to try and rest. My goal is to be back on live. We're on every Rising. We've been off a few days, so we're missing some of our people, but we'll have everybody jump back on. Once again, thank you for everybody who was praying for us as we were going through a lot of different stuff. It's pretty much a private matter, so I can't really talk about it. Maybe somewhere down in the future we'll talk about it. But we had a lot of not a lot. We had a basically medical situation that happened with our family, and we needed all hands on deck. And since we believe in healing naturally or whatever, if the stuff we would normally get through hospital care or whatever, we provide for ourselves. So we had to make sure that we had to do what we had to do. But everything is fine. Everything's great. Healing has happened, and we're thankful and grateful. You said you struggled this past year trying to find your path, and words really resonate. Oh, okay. Praise God. Thank you. You said you were very well spoken. Did I go to college? Yes, I did attend college and teach college and stuff. Have a degree, but I really, in all honesty, most of the stuff that I know, I won't say most of the stuff that I know, that's unfair. A lot of what I speak now has nothing to do with the way people taught us in college. I went through, even though it had a black face on it, so to speak, it was a very different type of culture that I was taught in. So I had to kind of release myself from those things. Yeah, everything's working out well. As you can hear, my son's having fun up there. Everybody's having fun. Everybody's resting, really. We've been traveling a lot. Oh, hey, Jared. Oh, that's Cole, right? Hey, Cole. Appreciate the love. Yeah. So our goal is to be on at 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. What I have planned is Revelation 22, but after talking today and tonight, rather than have to pray about some stuff, maybe we'll go on to something else. I'm going to try to have our meetings that we have planned for tomorrow. Problem is, though, is that since we really didn't have a chance to be on live, we probably have people that might think that we won't be on. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not really prepared for the YLP 83 one the way I need it to be. I want it to be, but we can still have it. So, but we'll see what's going on. So stay tuned for that. No classes so classes will start back up Monday. Remember, the classes are Hebrew characters, basic Hebrew, Sovereignty 1, Sovereignty 2, Natural Medicine 2, Basic French, and Cryptocurrency. So we'll be back on track, starting with our third session of Hebrew characters on Monday. And we're thankful to you guys. We're grateful. Thank you again for all the love that you shared. If you sent me something that was a DM through TikTok, I have not looked through them at all since Tuesday evening when everything went down. So, or actually, really, everything went down Wednesday in the Rising, like right when we were getting ready to go live. So we'll see. I mean, we can get back to you, but thank you so much. We appreciate it. Patreon members, like I said, starting tomorrow, I'll make sure that we have 2 videos a day, 2 pictures a day, so we get caught up on next week. So by the end of Tuesday evening, we should be caught up with everything. And thank you so much. Appreciate you. And hopefully we'll like I said, the goal is to start with Revelation 22. If the Most High says something different, we'll start with something different back up tomorrow. But thank you so much. Yeah, so we're on here We post this stuff later on YouTube as well, but we're on here. We post stuff later on YouTube. We actually had to start a whole new YouTube channel. Like they shut us down a lot just for simply speaking about what we're speaking about now. That's why we have so many moderators too. Thank you to the moderators, by the way, because so many people get upset. They shut us down and lie on us. Or sometimes TikTok just finds creative ways to get rid of us. As you can see, this is Kofi_43. We actually have another one up, Kofi_44, and we've hit 50,000 plus quite a few times on this. On YouTube, we had reached, tens of millions of people or something like that, tens of millions of views on stuff, and that stuff got taken down. So we're restarting the YouTube channel, but basically we're here. We record it later for YouTube. We have a podcast every rising session, so every 8 a.m. Eastern New York time session we do is on here and the podcast. We are on Facebook as well, on the risings, and we're on IG for a lot of the stuff that we do as well. So if you show up here tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time, or if you show up on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, if you show up, we'll be on all the time. We do early rise of Bible study session classes, getting ready to go in the prayer line, and we do like Hebrew Holy Days and other events as well. Those are usually going to be on Zoom though. But if you get your info or whatever, we can make sure that we have you on the contact list. We have several different people in different regions of the country to help us out with making sure that they keep in touch with people and stuff for us. So, but we thank you all. We appreciate you. My goal is to be back on 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. So keep us in prayer, because as long as everybody's continuing to be in the right place and healed and all that great stuff, we will be back tomorrow. So thank you again. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your concerns. I know a lot of you were trying to reach out. Some of you got probably everybody, not probably everybody as far as on my end, I know got bare minimum conversation back from me, when you were checking on us. And once again, it's just because I had to make sure we were healthy. So we thank you. We appreciate you. And we'll be back on track. So as always, hopefully you not only hearers of this word, but you study it, meditate on it, and become a doer of it. Execution is key, right? Culture is going to lead us to proper execution, and we're thankful and grateful for everybody for being on here. Once again, check out my wife, the Honorable Maya, who's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And you can check her out at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish, at TikTok, YouTube, and TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest. We're on every rising on here, 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. The early rise of Bible study session, that's actually once a week on Mondays at 6:45 a.m. Eastern New York time. But we're on every rising 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. We're finishing up our Revelation series, prayerfully tomorrow, depending on how we're led. So yeah. But if you want more information on all that stuff, if you stick around, it'll be said over and over and over again. So I promise you'll catch it if you go to the YouTube channel. We're really any platform we're on. If you're looking for us, just look up #FindKofi, #FINDKOFI. So if you look us up, you'll find us there, #FindKofi. But on any platform, but that's actually the name of the YouTube channel, #FindKofi. Thank you so much, though. Appreciate you all. I'm going to try and get some rest so I can make sure that I'm positioned and rested tomorrow, and make sure that baby gets into bed, all that great stuff. Thank you for your patience, and we look forward to getting back full speed ahead starting tomorrow. If anything changes as far as the meetings or anything, we'll let that be known. Just remember, no classes until Monday. So classes won't start back up until Monday, all right, until Shlashai. Till Raisha, excuse me. So thank you all for being on. Appreciate you. As always, this has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice to the voiceless and speaking the unspoken, until we have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be of it. Shabbat Shalom, family, and I will see you tomorrow. Yah willing. Peace.